Yo ho ho! Welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining me today. As always, I hope you're keeping well. So today I'm going to be talking you through some of the horror novels that I've picked up secondhand over the last couple of months. Some of them are from charity shops, some of them are mostly from Chapter's secondhand horror section. I will say right off the bat that this was absolutely beginner's luck because it has been about maybe two and a half months since I found any horror novels that I'm interested in charity shops. So I think I did initially just get really lucky with some of the things that had been on my to-read list over the years and randomly just stumbling across them. But without further ado, let's get into the books. So the first book that really kicked off this secondhand horror haul that I've been hoarding up on over the last couple of months is Haunted by Chuck Palahniuk. This is a book that I read probably 7 or 8 years ago. I got it out from the library. I knew it was kind of, I suppose, what you'd refer to nowadays as extreme horror. And to be perfectly honest, at the time that I read it, it didn't really move my needle all that much. And I found this in a charity shop in Bray, of all places. And I decided to pick it up because I'd like to have it on hand as a reference. It might be something that I want to not necessarily reread front to back, but to dip in and out of to refresh my memory a little bit. So the story of this book is that several authors go on a writer's retreat. And at this retreat, it isn't really what they expected it to be. They're really pushed to their limit as to what they're kind of forcing themselves to write and what their instructor is telling them to do. And basically the short stories are told through these multiple authors, and like this is what they're writing at this retreat. I'm really glad that I happened across this because it's a book that I've been meaning to get for a while. The next book I have is The Watchers by A.M. Shine. This is a book that I read earlier this year. I got it out from the library, and again I happened to come across it a few months later in a charity shop, and I immediately snapped it up. It's not in the best of condition, the spine's quite broken, but I just figured, again, it's good just to have it on hand, especially since I really enjoyed this book. It's set over in the west of Ireland, and it's about a young woman who is struggling with her financial situation, and she's offered kind of quick, easy cash. And basically all she has to do for this money is that she has to deliver a little bird to someone in Connemara, and she decides to do it and go for it. But it doesn't go as planned because she ends up breaking down in her car on the edge of this forest that's not on any maps. She has no idea why it's here. She has no reception on her phone. She's basically stranded. And what she decides to do is that she takes the bird with her and she starts to walk through the forest. And as she does so, she encounters another person in there, and they're basically telling her to run for her life and stuff. And she ends up being stranded in this like little house, cabin sort of thing in the woods, because there's something in the woods that's hunting her and the other people that she's come to find. And it's a really interesting kind of take on Irish folklore, and I thought it was just really fun. I feel like A.M. Shine is going to be like an auto-buy author for me in the future. Then I have Come Closer by Sara Gran. This is a book that I read quite early on in this year, and again I got it from the library, and I happened across it in the used section in Chapters, in the, I believe it was actually like wedged in the sci-fi and fantasy section, and I just happened to recognize the spine. This is about a young woman who is kind of struggling in her life. She's married, and you know, the marriage isn't going really well. She is working and she's kind of self-sabotaging at work, and she's kind of having these kind of blackout moments where she be working away, typing away, and then she has no recollection of what she's been typing, and then she gets in trouble at work for the explicit language that she's been using and all that sort of thing. And she starts having these really strange dreams about this woman standing on the shore of a beach who has these horrible jagged teeth. Is it actually possession, or is it her own self giving into her inner demons? And I love stories like that. If you are interested in stories about possession and demons and all that sort of thing, this is definitely one you should read. Another charity shop find was The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. Now this is actually like a film cover edition. It's a mass market paperback. From what I can gather is that there were a few of Clive Barker's books put out in these various editions, and I really like this. Normally I hate movie covers because obviously they have the horrible circle fake stickers on them being like, now a major motion picture. It's like, who'd care? I can accept a movie cover book when it's done well, and I feel like this is done really well. I had to read it. I had seen the film previously and I wanted to see how the book fared up with it, because, you know, sometimes, especially with films like Hellraiser, you'd feel like, oh, maybe the film is actually better based on like all the images and stuff. And to be honest, I'd say it's a 50-50 after reading it. I really enjoyed reading the book. If you don't know, this is the story of Frank, who is a man who has basically believed that he has experienced every single pleasure that this life has to offer him. And this has led him down a path of discovering this puzzle box that supposedly, when the puzzle is solved and the box is opened, it will take you into another dimension where you get to experience all these hedonistic pleasures that your mind on Earth couldn't even imagine. So naturally, Frank, being Frank, decides that this is a great idea and this is something that he wants to do. But what Frank isn't aware of is that this realm is ruled by Cenobites. And Cenobites were once humans, but have been so poisoned by the puzzle box and being in this realm for so long. Their bodies are so mutilated and lacerated, and they seem like they're in constant pain. And they really come across as these kind of like androgynous beings. So naturally, Frank opens the puzzle box, he meets the Cenobites, shit doesn't work out for him. And then it's down to the woman that he was having an affair with, actually his brother's wife, who discovers what's happened to him, and she tries to bring him back. And it's just a whole heap of good fun times. I loved the gore in this. I'm normally not a super strong gore person when it comes to horror. I prefer psychological horror, but I feel like I was really able to visualize some of the stuff that was happening in this, and it was just a blast. Next up, I have The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. This is another book that I read years ago. I did a review on the channel for it. I'll link it above. I'm pretty sure I still stand by everything that I said in that video, because I doubt my feelings have changed on this. What's interesting about this book is that it's actually based on a true story, and that's what makes it all the more upsetting to know that this kind of case really did happen. Basically, it's about two young girls whose parents end up passing away, and they are forced to live with their Aunt Ruth. And Aunt Ruth has a couple of children herself. She has, I think it's like 2 or 3 young boys, and they're really kind of just rough. And Ruth is fairly rough herself. And she ends up locking up one of the girls in the basement. The way the story is told, it's told through the eyes of a neighbor boy. And I have to say that this kid is probably one of my most hated characters in any sort of book that I've read over the last however many years I've been reading for. I hated this child, and I feel like it's completely fair, because he knew things were wrong. He knew he should tell his parents, and he just didn't, because his own curiosity, his own morbid curiosity, got the better of him. And it's just an absolutely heartbreaking read. If you want to read something really upsetting, feel free to read this. Next, I have 2 books by T. Kingfisher. The first one is The Twisted Ones. I read this last month or the month before, really enjoyed it. The premise for this is that our main character, Mouse, is tasked with cleaning up her grandmother's house after she passes away. Now, her step-grandfather had passed away a few years prior, and basically her grandmother was like alone in this house. The house is completely like hoarded up as well. As she's cleaning out the place, she discovers her step-grandfather's journals, and they really read like someone going into some sort of like psychosis experience or like a descent into madness. And they're just these really weird ramblings about these things out in the woods. And then things start to happen. She starts experiencing things out in the woods, feeling like she's being watched. And there was one specific moment in this that really triggered my fight or flight, because I would have just been gone. Like, there would have been no sticking around, running over to the neighbour's house for help, no nothing. I would have been in that car and gone. I really enjoyed it. This was my first T. Kingfisher book that I've read, and I'm actually currently in the middle of another one of her books, and that book is What Moves the Dead. So I have been looking for this particular edition of this book for ages. I was really debating on whether I should import it because it is the US edition. I found this in Chapters there about 2 weeks ago. The only thing is that it's a secondhand book, it's a hardback book, and it was €13, and I just felt like that was so steep, but I knew that if I didn't pick it up, I'd be regretting it. So I'm currently in the middle of this. It's a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher, and on the heels of the Mike Flanagan series on Netflix, I just wanted a bit more. So I'm all for the retellings and all that sort of thing at the moment. And this is seemingly quite weird. So this is kind of more focusing on like fungus and stuff. So our main character is contacted by Madeline Usher because she's dying. And she's living in this decrepit Usher house that's completely falling apart with her twin brother Roderick. And when Alex gets there, they realise the severity of the situation. They look so much older than they ought to be. Alex encounters someone around the estate and they talk about like how the animals are behaving badly, specifically the hares, that they're not right, that they don't walk right. And it sounds like there's some sort of like poison thing going on. So I'm really excited to finish this. I'm probably going to finish it this evening. And it is a tiny little book. I think it's only 165 pages, but so far so good. Then I have The Grownup by Gillian Flynn. I was really in the mood to read something by Gillian Flynn. The only thing I've read by her is Gone Girl, and I was looking for Sharp Objects and I couldn't find it anywhere, but I did come across this in a charity shop and I decided, you know, what the hell? I used to see it all the time on the book depository. It was like one of the first books that would pop up when you clicked on the horror section on there. Initially, I wasn't too invested in the main character. She is someone who is basically a con artist. She initially was a sex worker and occasionally still leans into that type of clientele, but now she's moved on to scamming people into thinking that she's a medium. And unfortunately, she ends up encountering this really sort of wealthy woman who believes that her home is haunted. And she agrees to go to this house to cleanse the house and, you know, assess everything that's going on in there. And when she gets to this house and realizes like that something is genuinely wrong, immediately starts to regret her decision. Definitely recommend this if you're looking for something that's a little bit thriller based, or, you know, something a little bit darker than maybe you usually would want to read. Next, I have 2 Joe Hill books that I found in 2 different charity shops 2 days apart from each other. Very weird circumstances, but they're 2 books that I've been meaning to read from him probably for the last 10 years or so. So they are 20th Century Ghosts and Heart-Shaped Box. And 20th Century Ghosts, I know, is a short story collection. I know the Black Phone, which was recently enough adapted into a film, is included in this short story collection. Aside from that, I really don't know anything else about it. We all know here that I love a short story collection, so I'm hoping that this will have something creepy and interesting in there for me and my specific tastes. And then Heart-Shaped Box is an interesting one because this is about an aging rocker who is a fan of collecting kind of weird, morbid, cursed items. Some of the stuff that he has already acquired into his collection include a cooking book for cannibals, a snuff film, and a hangman's noose. As he's perusing the internet one day, hoping to stumble across something that he can add to his collection, he does in fact do so. For $1,000, he ends up purchasing a dead man's suit, which is supposedly haunted by the dead man himself. And Judas has kind of gone through his life with plenty of ghosts in his past, so he figures, well, if this is real, what's one more ghost to add to the collection? Then Judas realizes that he's made a terrible mistake because this dead man is actually haunting him and he is appearing everywhere and he basically just won't leave him alone. So I don't know if this is going to have like a bit of a funny angle to it, because it does sound like a bit of a daft plot, but it sounds like something I will hopefully enjoy. Then I have Witch Bottle by Tom Fletcher. So I'd seen this book around. I haven't really seen many people mention it online or review it. So what is a witch bottle, you might ask me? Well, it is a bottle usually containing nails, and then the liquid in it is piss. I'm so glad that I learned that before ever getting a witch bottle tattooed on me, because could you imagine the embarrassment of somebody pointing that out to me and being like, why'd you have a bottle of piss on your shoulder? I'm like, I don't know. I thought it was cool. So our main character in this is a man who is living quite a solitary, quiet life these days. He's haunted by a lot of things in his past, primarily the death of his younger brother, and the fact that his marriage didn't work out and he no longer sees his child, and he's taken a job for being a local milkman. So he ends up kind of opening up to a woman in the village, and he later learns that she is in fact a witch, and he starts kind of confessing some of the stuff from his past to her and confiding in her about how much he's currently struggling. He's having a lot of these really weird nightmares, and it's just like his mind will not give him a moment of peace. So she ends up giving him a witch bottle in order to ward off whatever it is that's currently haunting him. But then the locals start to find out that he's messing around with this type of stuff, and they're really not happy about it. So that's all I know about the plot synopsis of this. Fingers crossed I enjoy it. Then I have another short story collection, again purchased in the used section in Chapters, and it is Some Will Not Sleep by Adam Nevill. I have only read The Ritual by this author before, but the second I saw this, I obviously was familiar with it, so I snapped it up. It's something that I'm really looking forward to getting into. I feel like his writing style really gels well with me, and I'm hoping that this is going to be really creepy. I'm hoping that there's going to be like really weird imagery, because I really enjoyed The Ritual. I know a lot of people kind of struggle with the second half of that book, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping that this will give me similar sort of creepy folk horror vibes. Another book from the used horror section in Chapters is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix is an author that I've only gotten into over the last year and a half or so. So I had read one or two of his books and came across this, knew that this was on my to read list, snapped it up. I read it a couple of months ago and it wasn't exactly what I expected. It definitely is more of an entry level towards the possession genre. If you've never read anything on possession before, it's based around two young girls who are best friends, obviously by the title, and one of them goes off one evening into the woods after the girls have been taking like drugs in the woods, and she comes back hours later. She doesn't remember anything or where she's been, and she comes back different. And I took that as like she comes back weird, but to her best friend she's weird, you know. So it's not the exact kind of setup that I was expecting, and it kind of surprised me and kept me on my feet. And you know what, towards the end of this book I did get like weirdly emotional and like upset by the eventual ending. Like I was really moved by it. I don't mean like I was upset in a bad way. It was just kind of a fun retrospect on the 80s and pop culture and all that sort of thing. And I was able to get really invested in certain characters, really hate certain characters and all that sort of thing. And like I said, it was just a really good, fun read. And then finally, the last book that I have in this haul is The Summer I Died by Ryan C. Thomas. So again, it's another Chapters find. I had seen it doing the rounds a lot on Book Talk. I consume a lot of like the horror side of Book Talk, specifically the more darker, disturbing reads. Like I'll watch a lot of TikToks about like extreme horror and stuff like that. It's about a young guy who is home for the summer holidays from college, and he's just planning to hang out with his best friend, and you know they're probably going to go around, drink some beers, and they assume that it's going to be a perfectly normal summer until they end up getting caught in the web of a sadistic serial killer, which is so funny when it's described as a sadistic serial killer. It's like, is there a serial killer that's typically not sadistic? I don't know. I thought that was kind of part of the gig. Basically, they have to fight for their lives, and this is meant to be really gruesome, really gory, super disturbing, weird, all that sort of stuff. I'm planning to read this in an upcoming reading vlog over the next couple of weeks, so you'll be hearing my thoughts on it fairly soon. Hopefully I enjoy it for what it was, but I'm a bit apprehensive about it. So those are all the horror novels that I've managed to accumulate over the last couple of months. If you have read any of these books yourself, or you're planning to read any of these books, please let me know. I feel like some people are going to have some seriously strong opinions on some of the books in this haul, so I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out and helps the channel out. And if you want to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Those are usually the places that I like doing little bookish updates and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I hope you really enjoyed this video and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.